panelists, as well as more folks to log on in here. Do you see Ryan? Okay. Great, we're just waiting for one more panelist, but I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. This event is the third and final webinar in the 2022 Spring Sustainability Series. And I want to take a moment to thank my co-hosts and co-sponsors, Yellowstone, Teton Queen Cities, and Energy Conservation Works. A few housekeeping items. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you'll just leave the question and who it's addressed to in the Q&A box, and we're going to take a few moments at the end to address any and all questions that anyone may have. So today's topic is on food waste composting here in Teton County, and food waste is a huge contributor to landfill-bound waste, weighing twice as much as normal trash. So we're happy that you're here with us to learn about the opportunities to compost food waste here in Teton County. My name is Becky Keeper, and I am the Waste Diversion Outreach Coordinator for Teton County Integrated Solid Waste and Recycling. And joining me is a panel of experts that will help in the discussion about the future of food waste composting for both residents and commercial organizations. And our goal today and hope is that you will leave here understanding the importance of food waste composting, as well as the various options that are currently available, so that way you can take real action on the road to zero waste, which is a goal to divert 60% of all of our Teton County waste by year 2030. But first, why? Why do we compost food scraps, and what is the importance? The first is methane reduction. So most people assume that their food waste will compost in a landfill, but it doesn't. Organics can't break down in a landfill because they are designed for storage. They're not designed for decomposition. So engineered landfills are anaerobic environments, meaning they lack oxygen, which impedes organic materials from biodegrading, and even worse, methane gas is created. And methane gas is a potent greenhouse gas. While it accounts for only 20% of global emissions, it is more than 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide at trapping heat within the atmosphere. Also, we want to compost our food waste because it accounts for more than almost half of our waste stream. According to the 2013 Wyoming Solid Waste Diversion Study, food constitutes approximately 20% of the state's waste stream. A 2014 waste characterization study that was performed by Grand Teton National Park revealed that more than 40%, which is twice of the state's average, is attributed to food. And currently, Teton County is conducting our own waste characterization study this year. And our waste audit, which was conducted in February, supported the national parks findings, with 40% of our local waste stream being food. So why is this an issue? Landfill space is limited, and creating more landfills is undesirable and very expensive. So by eliminating this bulk, meaning food waste, more space is created and the landfill's lifespan will be greater. Also, Teton County does not have an active landfill. Instead, we transport our refuse 100 miles just one way to Bonneville County, Idaho. And during the summer months, we average 6 trucks weighing 22 tons each, and that's daily, which in turn leads to more carbon emissions. And lastly, composting supports carbon sequestration. So composting holds promise in increasing water capacity, rebuilding soil health, and improving air quality. When compost is applied, the soil's health increases as microbes grow and become more plentiful. These microbes sequester carbon in the soil from photosynthesis. So all of that means that compost helps store carbon in the soil instead of releasing it into the air. This practice has the potential to help offset the carbon footprint of one of the most largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions, which is agriculture and food production. And on a really basic level, when we waste food, we also waste all of the energy and water it takes to grow, harvest, transport, and package it. Here at ISWR, we acknowledge that appropriate waste management is recognized as an essential prerequisite for sustainable development, and rather than mere pollution prevention and control, a shift towards a more holistic approach is necessary. The food waste hierarchy, which you can see here, posits that prevention through minimization of food surplus and avoidable food waste is the most attractive option. The second most attractive option involves the distribution of food surplus to groups with food insecurity, followed by the option of converting food waste to animal feed. And then almost last but not least is what we're here to talk about today, which is food waste composting. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Ryan Hostetter. She is the Principal Long Range Planner for Teton County, and she is here to discuss the wildlife feeding LDRs and how they directly apply to residential backyard composting. So thanks so much, Ryan, for being here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Becky, and nice to meet everybody. Yeah, well, composting is such an important way to hold a sustainable household. Living here in this incredible environment, of course, adds extra layers of complication to doing that. So we've recently been working on updating our regulations related to wildlife feeding. And within that includes new and updated regulations for how to store trash, but also how to contain compost. And just to cut to the chase, we want people to compost. This is a good thing, but where we live, we also want to make sure that we're not attracting specifically bears into our urban areas and giving them food rewards. So that's a really important thing. We're spending a lot of time working with our partners and our wildlife agencies to look into ways to help those issues. And this is just one of many, specifically composting. And so, I think the most important thing is the LDRs don't say anything about not being able to compost. We want you to, but we want you to keep your compost areas, piles, containers buttoned up and away from wildlife. So the new regulations aren't too specific, other than they require that food compost containers or piles be contained in either a bear-resistant enclosure, building, or fenced. One of the things that I've learned most working with Wyoming Game and Fish Department and their bear experts is, things like compost piles and even apiaries, keeping of bees, are very attractive to bears. So one of the tools that is most frequently used for outdoor larger areas are electric fencing and electric lines. That's quite common. And I know a lot of our nonprofit community is looking into programs to help educate and even help people install those types of systems. And I know you're thinking, I just live in town, I have a small lot, I have to put electric fencing around this. Well, you can also keep it in a container and keep it enclosed. We don't have as much of an issue in town yet as we do with the county, but I think as we look forward into the future, the more and more we button up our trash, wildlife are going to be looking and learning about the next best, what's the next low-hanging fruit to obtain food in town. And so, okay, it's not going to be trash anymore over time. Compost is a next best thing for wildlife to approach for food. So it's important to make sure that it's kept in a container that is bear resistant. What we've learned also is there's really no such thing as a bear proof container. Right now, our standards are a little bit different for trash versus compost. So what we've learned are trash can requirements. The trash can needs to be certified by this group called IGBC, International Grizzly Bear Committee. They have a website, and they have a PDF where they keep a list of all of the approved containers. And I suspect that there's going to be more compost containers being added to that list. But for trash right now, the regulation requires you use one of those. And not only one of those, it has to be a self-locking trash can. So, that's for trash. For compost, it doesn't have the same requirement. The technology, I think, is still being developed, but right now the rules essentially say keep it enclosed, fenced, just keep it buttoned up, really, is what we're looking for at this point. So those are sort of the main things, the highlights. These regulations, also to note, apply only in the county jurisdiction right now. So we're working on new regulations in the town as well, but the need, the emergency, the need was really in the county areas where more of the conflicts are actually happening. Now we're visiting the town. The town has a separate municipal code, so we write separate regulations for the town. And we're going to be visiting where the conflicts are, what types of conflicts exist within the town to do something similar. And that'll go through the whole town council process. So, so if you live in town, rules are different, but in the county, those were just recently updated, and we ask that you keep compost buttoned up. So I think that's that sums up where we are right now.
Great, thank you so much, Ryan. And I presume some Q&A might be coming in for you. So if you're able to stick around until the end to perhaps answer any questions, that would be super. And new and exciting, there's a lot of us on the scene who are accepting food waste composting. So I'd like to introduce our next panelist, who is a longtime friend of ISWR and a big reason ISWR is able to accept food waste composting today. He was a big proponent and very involved in our pilot project, which was conducted up in Grand Teton National Park and really allowed our program to grow and meet season over season goals. So I would like to introduce Curtis Hatterley of YO Farm Composting in Thane, Wyoming. So I'll pull up your presentation here. And the floor is yours, Curtis.
Thanks, Becky. Appreciate you conducting this venue for us to explain what the various partners are doing. So yes, I started Wild Farm Composting back in 2018. And so since then we've been collecting food scraps from Teton County. And, you know, this, as this slide shows, let's see as we get it going here, food scraps can be beautiful. In fact, just a few minutes ago, I was on a side street and somebody walked up and said, "What's that trash?" And I go, "Bite your tongue. That's not trash. That's a very valuable material." It's because I'm a farmer primarily. And so we take this to the farm where we put it in big piles and turn it into this beautiful finished product that we put back on our soils or offer it to customers, landscapers, etc. And so composting creates this product, which is basically fertilizer from a farmer's perspective. And those of you that may be aware, so commercial fertilizer for farmers now is a problem because the price has gone up dramatically because of the fossil fuel dramatic rise in their pricing. So even more valuable now is this compost, which again acts as a fertilizer, and in the meantime is saving a lot of landfill costs and space because it's taking basically a waste product and turning it into a very valuable product. Go ahead. Yeah, and as Becky mentioned, so food scraps in a landfill basically is doing no one any good other than creating even more harmful environmental problems like methane. So that's our option in this region, is to just throw your food scraps away in a trash, or backyard composting, which is wonderful and is a great way to go. The challenge, as Ryan mentioned, is it's a bear attractant or other, even your neighborhood dog can be a problem. Or the other problem with backyard composting is because of our climate, half of the year, lots of times that's sitting in a frozen state. It isn't doing much breaking down unless you have a pretty big pile. Next, please. So at Hatterley Farms in Thane, we grow vegetables, we grow cut flowers. Go ahead, we'll just cycle through these. We grow hay, grain. We put it on our beds where we're growing vegetables and cut flowers. This is in a high tunnel where we dump the compost. And this becomes infinitely valuable. And we offer residential composting. So the bucket you saw there is a bucket with a screw lid. So it is as probably bear resistant as a bucket can get. And then these 32-gallon roller carts. We do have just the regular ones as well as the bear-proof ones. We do accept meat, bones, and shells because our piles are big and they stay with conditions that will break down those materials. And it's nice to be able to offer that. And we do accept compostable bags because especially in the wintertime, that's one of the options is to put your food scraps from your kitchen, for example, or even if you're a restaurant in a compostable bag, because if you just put it directly in the bucket or the bin, it can freeze into a glacier in there, and then it's really difficult to get out. So we do encourage the use of the compostable bags during the wintertime. We do have a number of local commercial customers that we're working with, and so these are some of the newest customers. So yeah, we collected 480 tons of food scraps, which, you know, from a municipal standpoint is still quite small, but for us, it was quite a milestone to be able to collect and say that we're rescuing, so to speak, this amount of weight of food scraps that again would have just been put on a truck and hauled to Idaho, and really doing no one any good. So we're invested and we're excited about this opportunity to collect more and more food scraps from Teton County, to take them to our farm and to put them to good use. And yeah, I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Curtis. Fantastic. So our next panelist is new on the scene and is a man who is wrangling worms to compost waste into nature's richest soil. He's an absolute inspiration and pleasure. I would love to introduce Stefano, the worm cowboy from Alpine, Wyoming.
Thank you so much, Becky. Let me get my screen shared here. Can y'all see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me on. Just want to say, Becky, I'm honored to be here with some compost giants of our community, some leaders. It's awesome. This is my first presentation, and I'm really excited to teach you all about vermicomposting. My name is Stefano Daza. I'm the Chief Executive Cowboy at the Worm Cowboy, which is a vermicomposting service that helps busy homes and businesses in Alpine and Teton County reduce their food waste and divert it from the landfills. And today I'll be talking about earthworms and how they can help us manage our food waste and combat the climate crisis. But for more information, you can always go to my website, thewormcowboy.com, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We put out a lot of cool info in there. But yeah, let's get started. So just really quickly, most of you already know these terms, but I wanted to go through some words that you might be hearing me say and how they differ. So composting, as you know, many of us here know, is just the natural process of recycling organic matter, like leaves or food scraps, into a valuable fertilizer that can help increase soil fertility and promote plant growth. And traditional composting happens in aerobic conditions, which means under the presence of air, and generates biological heat. So I like to call this thermophilic composting, Vermicomposting is very similar. It's, recycling this organic matter, but using worms instead of the heat. Compost, the finished product of composting is a humus-like nutrient-rich substance, which is what, the fertilizer is. Vermicompost, also called vermicast, is pretty much the same thing, except that it goes, the material is eaten and consumed by the worms, and the finished product is higher nutrient concentration than traditional compost, and vermicompost contains worm castings, which I'll explain next, and fine pieces of composted material together. And worm castings, in short, is just worm poop. It's, worm, it's considered black gold by many people, and I'll go into that. So why compost with worms? There's a lot of good reasons. As Becky mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, organic waste makes up, more than half of all waste produced in the United States, and it decomposes anaerobically in landfills, producing methane, leachate that pollutes our waters and our ground. And landfills are actually the third largest source of methane in the United States, behind agriculture and fossil fuel productions. And 25% more potent than CO2 is devastating for the atmosphere. So if we can, control that stream, it would really help combat the climate crisis. And like Becky also mentioned at the beginning, rich soil is a carbon sequestrator. So by building the soil, we're helping take carbon out of the atmosphere. Premium all natural compost. So finished worm compost or vermicompost has higher microbial populations than traditional compost. And, it's actually this population of microbes that benefits the soil fertility and the plant growth. And this is just a result of, this organic matter passing through the worms and acquiring a rich microbiome. So you'll see higher nutrients, a lower carbon to nitrogen ratio, which makes nutrients more available to plants, and a higher amount of phosphate and nitrogen that is easily consumed by plants and soil. And then also it's a faster way to compost. So, vermicomposting can take us half the time of traditional thermophilic composting. And it doesn't need to be cured like traditional composting does in order to not burn your plants. It can be applied directly to your plants as soon as you harvest it. And last but not least, my favorite part, it's fun. Anybody can do this on a small scale at their home or a large scale like I'm attempting to do. And if you have any questions about how to start your own worm bin, please reach out afterwards. I'd love to teach you how to do that. So next up, I'm very briefly going to go through how I do my process. I've had to teach myself everything from beginning to end, and I'm very passionate about it. So very much like Hatterley Farms, we give our folks a 5-gallon bucket, which we ask people to fill with acceptable materials. We also accept meats, dairies, bones, which is great. And so, yeah, you can see people here happily filling up their buckets. Step 1, collection. So I do curbside pickup for our homes. We offer a bi-weekly and weekly service for different prices, and I'll actually come to your house and pick up your bucket on the day of your service, the morning of, with a Tesla electric car with a little trailer attached to it. My goal is to have my operations be 100% renewable energy run and fully sustainable. I just want to give a quick shout out to Energy Conservation Works because they offer renewable energy charging in town, which I actually utilize when I do my compost runs. So you guys are awesome. And as I expand, I'd love to do like a fleet of electric trucks. But for the time being, this is how I do it. And very quickly on the LDRs and the bear regulations. So my full-time job is here at the Jackson Hole Conservation Alliance. So we were really passionate to help pass that through. And as a conservationist, wildlife is very important to me. That's why I moved to this valley. and I want to make my service as wildlife friendly as possible. So the night before every service, our members receive an email notification saying to leave the compost bucket out the morning of the service. And I come between 7 and 12 a.m. to pick up the bucket. And a lot of my customers put their buckets in like a shed or like, you know, their little deck, places where it's like more protected. And it's just a way for us to avoid any conflict with wildlife. But that being said, we haven't had any conflicts yet, but I'm always looking for ways of improving this. So if anybody has suggestions, I'd love to get in touch. Ryan, yeah. So after that, step 2 is the secret sauce to my operation. We pre-compost. So this is pretty much a step of thermophilic composting, where we put all of our material in this bin that I have here, which is actually attached to a blower, like a playhouse blower that you'll see, and it's on a timer. So I fill this up with the correct ratio of food waste and wood chips, and then close this up, and it blows and basically aerates the bin and gives the microorganisms the oxygen they need to, you know, start breaking down the material, and they produce heat that can get up to 130, 140, the sweet spot for us. And we actually do this for 3 weeks. And the reason why this is the secret sauce of my operation is because it allows us to take in a lot more material, like dairy, meats, etc. Helps us kill pathogens like Salmonella, E. coli, weed seeds, and fly larvae, which is really important if you're producing compost. And also it makes all of this food that you're collecting into a homogeneous mixture that the worms more readily consume and can process a lot faster. So pre-composting is, you know, awesome. It takes about 3 weeks. And then we go to step 3, which is once I take the compost out of this bin, I pre-sift it. So you'll see with my little sifter that I have down there, I screen out the fine materials, which is what I'll feed my worms. And then the bigger chunks go back into a pile that I let sit for a bit more time covered. They will continue to break down until I can sift them into small materials. And then I feed my worms. So here you'll see my brand new worm reactor, I like to call it. I built this myself, just using some wood. Basically, it's a big worm bin with some little PVC pipes at the bottom running like grates. And I fill this up pretty much with my bedding and my pre-composted material. And I have just over 70,000 worms in there right now. And I feed this, you know, about once a week. It can process about 100 pounds, 80 to 100 pounds of organic material per week. And then the finished worm castings actually will fall to the bottom. I have to scrape them from the bottom, and I collect those every, you know, week or 2 weeks or so, which I then sift again. In the back of this, you can see how I started with my original worm bins. So each black bin that you see back there is a worm bin. But my goal is to eventually have these large scale worm reactors. They're called continuous flow systems, but and just have a lot of these and be able to process large amounts of compost. So then I harvest my worm castings, the things that fall from the bottom. Again, I sift it with a different screen to get that really fine material. And what you'll see here is, you know, the first bucket back there is the, you know, the compost buckets that I pick up from my customers, filled with, you know, peels, leaves, bread, whatever. And the finished material, the finished worm castings, vermicompost, this incredible black gold, as we like to say, that has so many incredible properties to, you know, restore soil fertility, help our gardens bloom out of control. It's amazing to actually see the process from start to finish. And then finally, my customers get vermicompost returns twice per year, in the spring and in the fall. They get 4 gallons of, so basically a 5-gallon bucket, not filled to the top, but for them to use in their home gardens, raised beds, plants, etc. And actually today I'm meeting with Teton Slow Foods to create a little partnership with their community gardens, where if you, for example, don't have a garden at home, you'll be able to donate your finished compost to the community garden. So I'm really excited to do that later today. So just wrapping up, I'd like to just answer some frequently asked questions that I get. So a lot of people, first thing they say is, can I just pick up some worms from my backyard and start a compost bin? And unfortunately, no, is the short answer. So there's 9,000 species of earthworms in the world, and only about 3 of them are actually helpful for composting. So those are the European night crawlers, the African night crawlers, and the red wrigglers, which is the ones that I use. Red wrigglers are pretty awesome. They consume half of their body weight per day in compost. So they actually are able to work extremely efficient. And they're also, instead of burrowing down, they're horizontal burrowers. So you just keep feeding on the top layers and they'll eat those layers and leave their finished compost at the bottom, which is how my worm reactor works. So they're really cool. How long does the whole process take from start to finish? It takes about 3 to 4 months from the raw food scraps to the finished worm castings. And I'm always working to make the process more efficient. Kind of difficult right now because it's just me, but it's incredible how I've improved in the process in just a few months. The next question that I always get is, does it smell? If you're starting your own worm bin, people are concerned that it's going to be stinky, attract flies, etc. Basically, if you're doing it right, if you're not overfeeding it, if you're keeping the moisture level correct, it should not smell whatsoever, which is pretty amazing. Becky saw my operation at my house and she saw that it was not stinky at all, even though I was processing large amounts of compost. And if you're starting your own worm bin, don't be afraid about the smell, because it should smell like the ground of a forest. And then finally, how do you compost in the winter? This is a good question that was just brought up. It's tough because it's so cold. It definitely slows down a little bit. The good thing is that I keep my worms in a climate regulated room right now, so they can continue composting over the winter, and our piles are big enough that they will actually continue to heat up. And that pre-compost bin actually stays really hot even in cold temperatures. But eventually I'd like to get greenhouses, with solar panels that keep the greenhouses warm with a heater and stuff like that. But that's down in the future. But yes, winter is a challenge, but I'm still able to do it, or at least was able to do it last winter. And I'm excited to tackle it on again this upcoming winter. And with that, just want to say thank you again to everybody. If you're interested in composting with us, please reach out. Our mission is simple: feed the soil, not the landfill. And we have a lot of clients that are very happy and growing. So we'd love to add you to our compost community. And thanks again. That's it.
Thank you, Stefano. As he had mentioned, I was able to visit his facility down in Alpine, and it's absolutely fascinating. So I'm really thankful and grateful you were able to join us today and share with Teton County and the folks here everything that you've got going on. And last but not least, I want to introduce Dane Buck, who is the owner of Terra Firma Organics. He has been contracted by Teton County to provide composting services for us since 2006. And not only is he our contractor, he donates time, equipment, and expertise to support non-traditional waste diversion programs and sells his soils and compost here in Teton County. So, hi, Dane.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
We've got you.
Okay. All right. So Becky, thank you. Really appreciate you setting this up. I do not have a presentation for you guys today. I'll just give a brief overview of kind of our commercial operations. and then take any questions whenever you guys are ready for that. So as Becky stated, I own Terra Firma. We've been here since 2006. We actually started the composting operations for Teton County, what seems like an eternity ago. And with that, we've learned a ton of different challenges that we've come up against in the community, from different types of pesticides or herbicides that stay in soils for longer than any of us had ever hoped, to how we manage problems like garbage and things like that end up in our products. And then how do we get rid of them? Because most people don't want to buy compost that has little pieces of plastic or glass or things like that. And so for us, I'd say the majority of the work that we do at our facility and what we're striving to push towards is starting clean so we can end clean. Teton County just installed our Tiger Depackager. So for any of you that are on the call or that are on the Zoom call today that are large producers, that machine is designed to help reduce the amount of inorganic products that will come into our system. Our system is more designed to manage, we'll deal in the thousands of tons instead of tens or hundreds of tons. But our operations will be able to manage, we estimate somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 tons a year at this particular operation. The big restraints and restrictions we're going to have on receiving, I believe, and Becky, you correct me if I'm wrong, but most people can bring compostable products to the transfer station, where we will be able to inspect those products and then properly clean them if it's necessary. We're still asking that people kind of use the zero number as far as what we will allow for inorganic materials received, and I would probably just go ahead and extend that across Curtis's operation as well as Stefano's operation as to all of us composters. It is a killer of our products. So for anyone that is looking to be bringing this stuff in, we really have to put an emphasis on starting clean. And that comes clear down to the little tiny stickers that are on organic produce. It's a major, major problem for us. We own operations in Las Vegas, in Reno, have some operations in California. So we do this on a much larger scale and have experienced it at all of our facilities. This isn't just wow, they're really picky in Teton County. This is a problem to the composting industry. And these are things that a lot of us industry leaders and a lot larger companies than ours are pushing really hard on packaging to try and figure out ways to work with packaging operations to reduce the amount of waste that ends up in final use products like ours. So at our facility, I believe that depackager turns on, I think, on the 13th of July. And so for any of the larger producers, that material will be coming in large trash trucks, where it will go through this machine that will separate out inorganics and organics. But even to that level, there's still small amounts that can still get through. So we're going to ask that people still try and keep that stuff as clean as humanly possible. From there, the material that we manage here will go through, it starts out in our static piles that we manage here, which are we manage temperature, we manage oxygen levels and moisture. We also have our own proprietary blends that we can manage how much nitrogen to carbon we mix into those products. All of our products are sent off to a lab so that we can detect what is in those products, as well as if they're rich in a certain nutrient or low in others. Even with compost, you can use too much. It's a pretty common problem that people will think, oh, if some is good, more is better, like water. People tend to overwater their gardens because they need it, so they put more on. With compost, a big thing that we try and help people see is that a little goes a long way. And most of the compost we're dealing with in this area are going to be high in potassium, and potassium can lock up other nutrients in your soil. So you want to be really careful about over application of your compost, even if you're getting it on some of these exchange programs, that you're thinking about where you're putting it, and that you're not just putting it to the same spot every year. The way I like to explain compost is like sugar when you're making cookies. It's a part of the recipe. It's not the recipe. So you don't want to grow everything in compost. Compost should be a mixture with soil or with other mineral components to allow things to grow. So what we offer at Terra Firma, which can be purchased down at the Evans Rock Yard, which is in the front of Evans Construction, we do engineered soils. So our soils are sent off to the lab. We determine what they lack, and then we add in compost, and in some custom blends, we'll add in other nutrients to balance that soil so that it can produce. Some soils, pretty commonly here in Teton County, are high in pH, and our compost tends to be higher in pH because the feedstocks that we put in start high, so they end high, which will then restrict the amount of uptake that a plant can take of nitrogen. So then you have to put more nitrogen on, which, as Curtis mentioned earlier, is pretty expensive right now. So having a good understanding on the backside as to where you're going to use this stuff, you can always reach out to us. We can send soil samples off to find out what, like if you have a problem spot in your yard, we can send soil samples off, find out what it's lacking, and then help determine what it may need. But on general, we have just baseline products that are safe to use, whether it be in garden use, which will have no long-term herbicides that reside in those soils. It's tested for that specifically. And then we have other ones that are just more baseline for trees and shrubs, for plants that are not sensitive to those herbicides. That yard is open from, I think it's 7 to 5, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 1 on Saturday. So it's basically 6 days a week. It does look very commercial, as does most of our operations, but it is for the homeowners. It's designed so you can show up and you're billed by the weight of your materials. So whatever is loaded onto your truck is what you're billed. We can also help schedule shipping materials to and from your yard, from your house, if you require larger orders of that nature. One thing we do not have as a service, but we encourage any of the haulers that are doing it. We do not do any collection services of food waste. I'm actually going to be supporting the vermiculture aspect with Stefano's operation. We'll be hiring him to do our home services. But as far as the current operations, predominantly what we do is more of the hotels, schools, hospitals, large producers, because we're set up to be receiving on a much larger scale than that. And my belief is, if you can keep it at home, you should. If you can compost at your house, you should. If you can't, then passing it off to someone like Curtis or Stefano is an excellent option, so that you can either feed produce or feed worms. I'm a big believer in that. Other than that, I think, unless you have any other questions, I'll leave it to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dane, so much. And your experience, expertise is invaluable. So thank you so much for being here today with us. I was going to share a little bit about Teton County's food waste composting program. We began accepting food waste for composting in February of 2021 at the trash transfer station, and we still do today. So this is available for anyone who is able or interested in self-hauling for either residents or businesses. And again, as Dane mentioned, if you're interested in purchasing the compost, that would be through Terra Firma Organics. And also to echo what Dane has previously said, Teton County's food waste program is pretty simple. It's food waste only. So coffee filters, paper products, stickers, and rubber bands need to be removed from the food waste prior to being dropped off. And another major food exception is shellfish. We are currently not accepting shellfish. The oyster shells basically are as strong and brittle as glass. And so that's something that we are exempting from our program at this point in time. Also, we are not accepting compostable items. So many of these products claim that they're compostable, but it can be difficult to tell which products are truly compostable, as many have like really ambiguous marketing that can confuse the consumer. When we made that decision, we reached out to other communities with food composting programs, and all of their advice was very similar and very basic. It was start small and only accept food waste. So that is our motto right now. We are beginning a curb to compost program, which is for commercial food producers, where we will pick up and haul food waste from your site. And we will begin that on July 12th. And we offer various sized rolling containers and carts. And we have various pickup frequency to fit your needs. Also, bags for that program, compostable bags will be optional and based on the business if they'd like to use them. They are really beneficial, like Curtis said, when it comes to the harsh winter months and freezing, as well as helping with odors to keep wildlife at bay. And our carts will be wildlife resistant. And then the future, what we planned on, or what we plan on coming down the pipe, the 2019 SPET, or Special Purpose Exercise Fund, funded the purchase and installation of a food waste depackager. This was the day that it was delivered. It was really exciting. And our goal for the future is, to, like Dane said, to accept large quantities of food waste from large grocery chains, locally and regionally, collecting packaged food that is not suitable for donation. We always want to promote donation first for food insecurities. And then we also plan on beginning to accept residential food waste for composting at the recycling center later this summer. We've received a lot of feedback about the $10 minimum being a deterrent down at the trash transfer station. So we received that feedback, we heard that feedback, and we are acting on that feedback. So we plan on accepting food waste at the recycling center, and that will be for residents, and they will only have to pay the weight of their scraps. There won't be a minimum. So with all of that, I hope everyone here is, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I hope everyone here is walking away with a little bit of encouragement on how to begin food waste composting, either at home or for your business, so that way you can take real action on the road to zero waste. And I do want to take a moment to thank Bailey Collins, who is the project manager of Yellowstone Teton Clean City. She's kind of the Oz behind the curtain for this entire series, and it truly wouldn't be possible or successful without her hard work. And I want to invite anyone with information or resources to post links or information in the chat box. This is a place of sharing information in the spirit of taking action. So if anyone has any suggestions, thoughts, links, they can pop those into the chat. And then we will open it up to answer any questions that have shown up in the Q&A. And anyone can add questions that they have on. There's a question that says, when will compost drop off at the recycling center start? We are aiming for August. That hasn't been confirmed, but we are looking at as early as August. So that's our target right now. And I will be working on the education and outreach to get that information out to the community when we're ready to start accepting that. We would be accepting it only during our business hours, which is Monday through Friday. We're open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Any other questions from attendees on the call today? Great. Well, thank you all so much. This webinar was recorded and will be posted. So feel free to pass it on and share it with other folks. And we just appreciate you taking the time during your lunch break to spend with us to talk about food waste. So thank you all so much.